Hi, I'm Stanley, and I have a big treat for you, and I know it's going to be a big treat for me. I'm here with one of the top talents in the comic book business, Jim Lee. Jim, it's great to see you.
How do you do, Sam?
Listen, you know, the old gag about our parents are the only ones who can tell us apart, right? My namesake over here,
Right.
and I'm proud of it. Jim, before we get into the artwork and the things that everybody wants to see, I just want to know a little more about you. Don't ask me why, but where are you originally from? How did you get here? How were we lucky enough to have you?
Oh boy. Well, basically, I was born in Seoul, South Korea. We moved here when I was 5, and I remember drawing from the moment I can remember anything. I just remember I was 4 or 5, and I had a woman as a tutor, and she would teach me how to draw. And
You had a
pastel.
tutor who taught you to draw?
Yeah,
when you were 4 or 5?
yeah, I remember working in oil pastels, and she said, start with a light yellow crayon, then work on with darker values and things like that.
Wow.
I still feel I use that knowledge today. And then I took a lot of high school classes and things like that. I've always drawn and been pretty good at that. And then, but as I got older and had to be more serious about my life, I never really intended to become a comic book artist. I went to college and got a degree in psychology, and I was actually a pre-med when I was there, and something just didn't gel right. And
I'm sorry you said you had a degree in psychology. I was feeling so nice and relaxed talking to you. Now I'm going to be all nervous and watching everything I know talking to a psychologist.
And that was biopsychology, experiments of rats and stuff.
Is that what it is, biopsychology?
Well, there's I don't want to get too much into it, but there's cognitive and all these different fields within psychology.
That's great. But you finally went legitimate and got into comics,
well,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, what happened was my senior year, you have to write a thesis to graduate, and to ease up on my workload, I took some drawing classes. I figured I can draw, and there's no homework or anything like that. It'll be a breeze.
Yeah.
And I found that those are probably the best classes I took at college. And my teacher was very encouraging and said, "Have you ever thought about an art career?" And that kind of got the idea in my head. And so after I graduated, I told my parents I was going to take a year off before I applied to medical school. The idea of 4 more years of school and all this training did not really appeal to me. And so I put together some artwork, and I went to a convention. I showed it to some editors at Marvel, and I got work. It took about 4 months. I was pretty fortunate.
Pretty lucky for us that you went to a Marvel editor. I mean, you might have gone to just an ordinary person.
The funny thing is that they were the only ones that gave me work. I showed it to a lot of smaller companies in DC and
That's
stuff.
why they're smaller companies.
That's right. There you go, Stan.
Well, that's really great. Yeah.
So ever since then, it's just been a roller coaster of a ride, and like this year has probably been the biggest year yet.
And now, do you mind if I tell the people why this is one of the biggest years yet? This is really such an incredible fact. It's hard to believe. Years ago, and over the years in the comic book business, if a book sold 500,000 copies, or 750,000, or 1,000,000 copies for a comic book, I mean, that was phenomenal. Well, this man, Jim Lee, did the highest-selling, illustrated the highest-selling comic book of all time last year. He did X-Men #1, and Jim, I can't even tell him how many copies that book sold.
I think we sold about 8.2 million copies. That was the latest count.
8.2 million copies of one comic book, and Jim, you've got to show the book.
Well, we're still counting the results from Idaho and stuff. We got a lot of mini straggler buyers. This is 3 of the 5 covers. I guess the other 2 are sold out. But they're all X-Men #1. They were all released in August of 1991.
Even Jim can't get them all. Now, I think you better explain what you mean by 3. Usually you do a comic book and it has 1 cover.
Right.
What happened over here?
Well, basically, recent history has shown that when they produce a #1 comic, especially of a popular title like Spider-Man or X-Men, there's a very strong response from the audience, the collectors and the readers. They'll buy multiple copies because they like it so much and they see it as an investment. So there was a feeling that they knew they were going to sell millions of copies going into it, and the feeling on everyone's part was, why not give them something extra? Instead of getting the same comic, we can give them different covers, and each issue actually has a different middle section, a different poster.
I'll be done.
So there's like different things in each one.
Let's see that poster, and let's see this poster.
Let's check out all the posters.
And hold it up long enough and give the camera time to get on it, because this is really interesting. These are 2 separate posters, the same book, but different editions of the same book, wherever the camera is. I hope I'm holding these the right way. And here's a 3rd poster here, right?
Right.
And there were actually a couple more that you don't have with you.
Right, the special edition had an inside poster and a little
Look at that.
sketchbook in the back and everything.
And they're all different. Wait a minute, isn't this the same as
No, the poster is
Am I
it's in
showing
the middle.
the wrong one?
Yeah, there's like a middle ad here. So anyway, this is the poster here.
This is why they moved me out to the coast. I do things wrong occasionally. That's the poster, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, and also the covers line up to make one larger image. This is getting a little tricky. It's,
oh, that's great.
It's one of these.
You want me to help you?
Yeah, it's one
Where
of
does
these,
this one go?
I
You mean this would be one picture? If you
right,
put them
right.
together?
There's one more cover, and
There's probably something in between these two. Or
no,
is
it's supposed to line up. I think.
Oh, it does, because
see,
there's,
right.
the horizon line of the
Right.
rocks, and it comes
Right.
together. You're absolutely right. These
Right.
line up.
Right.
That's great.
Multifunction comics.
Yeah. That's great, he says modestly, of our books. Anyway, as I say, it's a staggering feat to sell over 8 million
Over 8 million.
copies of one thing, and the multiple covers, of course. Now, what are you doing currently, Jim?
Well, I'm still working on the X-Men. I think I'm on issue 8 or 9, something like that.
Do you mean after selling 8 million copies, we haven't fired you? We're still
Oh
letting you hang
no!
around?
Yeah, I don't
God,
know. You know,
aren't we nice to you? Yeah.
they got to cut back. Basically, a kickback. What am I saying? Cutback. Basically, I'm plotting and drawing the book. A plotter is sort of a guy that comes up with a story but doesn't supply the dialogue. And so the concepts and the new characters and the new villains are created by me. And then
You've gotten so much into the series with the illustrating it that
Right.
now you want to contribute the story also. So
Right.
do you work with the writer and the editor and you say, this is the story I would like? I want
Right.
you to know, I ask
No.
you these things as if I don't know,
Right,
but
right.
I don't want people to
You
think I'm
started all
really
this.
this
Come on,
ignorant,
yeah, right.
but I feel it's the way to do it,
Right.
you know?
No, I usually will talk with the editor, Bob Harris, first, and we talk about possible story ideas. He goes, no, yes. And I go, okay, we'll go with that, and I'll flesh it out some more. And then I'll oftentimes talk to the scripter, the writer, who's going to supply the dialogue and tell them what's going to happen and get their input. And I, you know, there are people in the studio I work with that I ask them for input. Pretty much anybody and everywhere. You know, the fan mail that comes in, I read it and I'm affected by what they say. You know, this character should die, and I go, well, maybe they're right. You know, so I try to be in tune to what the audience wants and to what my editor wants. At the same time, try to put my own creativity in there, my own tell my own stories.
You know, the funny thing is, we always feel one of the things I'm happy about at Marvel Comics is we do read the fan mail, every letter.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes it can be funny, like with Spider-Man for years, 50% of the fan mail used to say, you've got to kill Aunt May. We hate Aunt May. We're tired of Aunt May. And we print those letters, and then the other 50% of the fan mail would say, if you kill Aunt May, we're never going to buy another copy again. So you have to use your own judgment, too.
Right.
But it's great to see what the readers want, and man, they sure let us know, don't they?
Oh, definitely. It's great getting the mail.
Let me ask you another thing, Jim. You were talking earlier, and actually, I've known you, but we haven't really had that much of a chance to talk before, so I found this fascinating. You were showing me something that impressed me so much. You also know a lot about mime, don't you? Or mime. I always say, you know, before I said the word, I say, I've got to say it right. I'm not going to say mime. That's probably wrong. It is mime.
Right.
It's from pantomime. That's how I'm going to remember.
Right, it's one of those French
Pantomime.
things. Yeah.
But somebody told me in France they say mime.
Right.
So if this tape goes to France, I'm correct. And
Harry,
you're really,
I mean, I don't know why they get into that whole
Anyway,
different pronunciation.
But show us a little bit about that, because you did a little before, and it was really great.
Well, I like to use it. I took a class in college, a sort of extracurricular sort of thing, and
When you should have been doing your psychology.
Right. And what they do in mime is they have a thing called tick and tack. I think it's been a while, but it's the ability to create an illusion of weight or resistance when there's nothing there. And I actually think you can use a lot of those techniques, or at least the thinking behind it all, when you're drawing the comic books, because to create a successful book, and we'll go over there and I'll show you some stuff.
I can't wait.
Okay, you gotta take things to the extreme. You gotta if a guy's big and frightening, he should be huge. If a car is like skidding around a corner, the wheels should be coming up, and smoke should be flying, and papers should be flying. And the thing is, these are all little. You have to put clues and ciphers in to create the illusion of speed, of momentum, or whatever. And mime is sort of the same thing. You want if something is heavy, you want to see it on the face, and you want to see it in their arms and the way they hold their back and stuff. So if there's like a wall in front of you, you have this moment of total relaxation, and then as you press up against the wall, you create tension in your arm. So it's been a while. So and so if you have like a rope or something, this is another example. So if you're picking up a rope, you would grab it like this, right? And then pull like that, and you can see where the shoulders go, and where
every
the
part
weight,
of your body is moving.
So if someone's pulling on this rope, you know, you would feel it in the head, and all these things will move as the things as changes happen. And the thing is, there's no one pulling on this rope or whatever. You know, I have to create the illusion of someone pulling on that rope, and that's what we do with comics. Is you have to create the illusion of characters jumping and hitting each other, or lifting a car. You know, they just can't lift it like this unless they're incredibly strong, and that's the impression you want to get. But they should feel it, and there should be sound effects, and their face should be grimacing, and things like that.
Oh man, that was great. I used to put the sound effects in on the strips when I did. That was the thing I enjoyed the most. I lettered them in myself, and I used to try to do them phonetically. You know, I'd make up my own funny sounds. And once I did a little caption that I was most proud of. I did a sound effect, something like "garumph," and I had 3 O's, you know, G-U-R-O-O-M-P-H. And I put a little asterisk, and on the bottom of the panel I wrote, obviously the 3rd O is silent. We got more mail on that. But what you just did is great, because basically it seems to me that every artist is really a director. You know, you're directing your own strip, and you've got to be that way. You're working with actors. The only thing is you're working with actors that you have drawn, and I see that's even part of the note I have here. And can you give it?
Yeah, sure. I can show you. As far as the directing goes, you want to.
That camera is hungering for an example.
All right, here we go. Example 1. This is a Xerox of a layout I did, and essentially it just tells the story, and it's very simple. It blocks out the figures, and it identifies the characters. And I do just very quick gesture outline drawings, nothing too detailed, because at this point I'm just thinking about telling the story clearly. And also...
and where it'll appear on the page.
Right. And so, yeah, you are a director. You say to this guy, Sabretooth, you don't look frightened enough. Why don't you grimace a little more, and we'll put some sweat, you know, beating up on your face or something like that. And then we'll maybe put some action lines. There are ways to sort of accentuate the drama or the tension. So the final image looks sort of like this.
That's a heck of a difference.
Yeah, well, I put a little more work into this. You know, so, but the thing is...
There he is with much more of a grimace than he had right over there, right? But you knew by doing that,
that's my shorthand.
The way you wanted it to
That's sort of my shorthand grimace. So when I go back days later and actually draw it, I go, oh, you should be grimacing. And then, you know, I put all the special effects really short with shorthand here. And then later I'll go in and put a lot more lines and broken glass flying and all that stuff. That's sort of like special effects. But as far as the directing, this is where it all happens as far as a comic book goes. Because you're telling stories. That's what it all comes down to.
When you say shorthand, that's a pretty good example, because basically, I guess, the original rough layouts you make, that is shorthand. And it's just little notes so you know what happens, and then you go back and you put it in. You put it in English or in drawings in this case.
In many ways, the final drawing is actually not tedious, but it's just icing on the cake. The hard part comes in doing this stuff.
Well, I don't know. You're keeping me in suspense, and we're probably keeping our viewers in suspense, but I would say in about 3 minutes, we're going to get over to that drawing board, and you're really going to show how you do it. Let me ask you one question, though. How do you go, in your own mind, how do you go from the basic idea to the completed artwork? What goes on in your head as you do it? In 2 words.
Well, I visualize it, then I draw it.
Take 3 minutes.
All right. Well, when I read a story, or if I'm coming up with a story idea, I try to think of, I mean, since it's pictures, I try to think of images. What would be a good image? You know, locations and settings and things like that. You don't want the standard backgrounds and buildings. You want something fantastic. You want you want to excite the readers with stuff they've never seen before. So when it's hard to do this, of course. So I sit there and I kind of close my mind, or like especially if I'm in the shower, just let my mind wander, and I play the comic book in my head, and I see the characters run and down the hall, and I hear the dialogue and the special effects. It's like a little mini movie. And then when I get to that stage, that's when I start sitting down and jotting stuff down, and then moving scenes around and things like that. And then I would go from that and actually start doing the breakdowns like this, and hopefully it all fits within 22 pages.